Hello viewers, welcome to the Bachelor course of Population Studies. Today we will discuss about international migration. Throughout human history, migration has been a courageous expression of the individual's will to overcome adversity and to live a better life. Migration may take place by choice or even by force, but it is mainly motivated by better living and working conditions. Indians have been migrating to various parts of the world from ages immemorial. The earliest emigration of Indians may be traced to the trade and religious contacts with other civilizations like Greek and Mesopotamia. Later, the colonial rule in the country led to significant outflows of the mass of population for a variety of reasons. However, the post-colonial phase changed the whole character of migration from India. Now, greater proportion of the educated and professionally skilled persons, they started migrating from the country, and the migration is more of permanent character. The flow of professionals and skilled persons has gathered momentum, particularly after globalization. The international migration of people is actually a complex of a number of factors from the demand as well as the supply side. In the destination country, the demand for immigrant labor is determined by both the prevailing domestic labor cost as well as the supply of unskilled and skilled labor. From the viewpoint of the source country, the outward movement of labor would be determined by the wage differential, the skill content of labor, and the cost of and flexibility in migration. Fewer employment opportunities also act as the major driving force behind migration. John Somavia, the Director General of International Labour Organization, has stated, when people cannot find work at their home, in their communities and societies, they look elsewhere. In this perspective, it is but natural to assume that the international migration solves the problem of labor deficient and labor surplus economies, and at the end both are better off. Besides, both the destination as well as the source country has different types of impacts of international migration. In the developing source economies, the inflow of remittances from the emigrants generally captures whole of the discussion regarding the impact of international migration, but the critics say that the emigration of the professionals and the skilled workers from the source economy has a number of harmful effects, which may even outweigh the benefits of the remittance inflows. In this perspective, let us examine the pattern and effects of international migration from India. First of all, let us have a look at trends and pattern of international migration from India. International migrants are defined as persons residing outside of their country of birth or nationality. This broad definition includes migrant workers, family migrants, refugees and asylum seekers, but not short-term visitors. The 21st century has been called the age of migration, essentially because there are more migrants in the world today than ever before. About 232 million international migrants in 2013 alone. However, as percentage of total population in the world, the share of migrants has been almost stable at around 3%. Yet today only 1 out of every 35 people is a migrant, and if we group all the migrants worldwide in one country, it would constitute the 5th most populous country. The changes in international migrant stock for the world as a whole can be observed from this figure. The figure shows that the number of international migrants in the world has increased from 154 million in 1990 to 232 million in 2013. But as a proportion of total population of the world, it has increased from 2.9% to 3.2%, which means an increase of merely 0.3 percentage points. Though a big majority of the international migrants move to the developed economies, but the migration within the developing economies is also considerable, and thus migration takes place not only from the south to north but also from south to south. The UN estimates have shown that the number of international migrants in the Asian region in 2013 was 73 million as compared to 62 million in Europe. India, with about 5 million international migrants, is ranked among the top 10 countries in the world. This can be observed from this figure. The figure shows that in the year 2010, India with 5,436,000 international migrants was placed at 9th rank in the world, while USA had the largest number of international migrants. True picture evolves if we look at the bilateral migration corridors. These can be observed from this figure. During the period 1990 to 2000, the United States was the destination of 5 of the top 10 bilateral migration corridors in the world, with large numbers of international migrants originating from China, India, Mexico, Puerto Rico and Vietnam, but in later time periods, that is during 2000 to 2010 and 2010 to 13, its importance diminished, and now it is a destination of only Mexico among the top 10 bilateral migration corridors. We can also observe the diminishing importance of USA as a destination for Indian immigrants. During the period 1990 to 2000, more of the Indian immigrants flew to USA than to UAE, but in later time periods the immigrants flows from India to UAE surpassed the same from India to USA, and by the year 2013 the flows from India to USA were not part of the top 10 bilateral migration corridors. According to the annual report of the Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs 2012-13, there are about 5 million overseas Indian workers all over the world. More than 90% of these workers are in the Gulf countries and in Southeast Asia. During 2012, 7,47,041 workers emigrated from India after obtaining immigration clearance. Out of this, 3,57,503 went to Saudi Arabia, 1,41,138 to UAE, 84,384 to Oman, 63,096 to Qatar and 21,241 to Malaysia. States of Uttar Pradesh, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan and Punjab were the leading sourcing states in order of the numbers who emigrated from these states. Another important aspect of the pattern of international migration from India is its age structure and gender composition. Both the gender composition and the age structure of the migrants have significant impact upon the demographic composition of the source as well as the destination country. Greater outflow of the females vis-a-vis males leads to fall in fertility rates, and similarly greater outflow of migrants of the age structure 15 to 59 years reduces the proportion of the productive population in the source country. Both of these trends have their own socio-economic implications. So, it is important to look at the age structure and gender composition of international migrants from India. This can be observed from this figure. The figure shows that among the international migrants from India, the proportion of the females is higher not only from their respective proportions in total migrants in the world, but also from that in South Asia. But the median age of the international migrants from India is higher than that of the world and South Asia as a whole. The figure shows that the median age of international migrants from India in 2013 was 48.9 years as compared to 33.7 years for South Asia and 38.4 years for world as a whole. This shows that as compared to other parts of the world as well as South Asian region, relatively older population migrate from India, and this difference is of about 10 years and 15 years with respect to average age in the world and South Asia respectively. This can be further observed from the age structure of international migrants from India, South Asia and the world as a whole from the next figure. The figure shows that lower proportion of the international migrants from India belong to the age group 0 to 19 years and 20 to 64 years as compared to the average proportion for the world as a whole, while a significantly higher proportion of the migrants from India belong to the age group more than 65 years. It is 29.9% for India as compared to 12.3% for South Asia and 11.1% for world as a whole. Yet, if we look at the age structure of India alone, we can see that 64.7% of the total international migrants from India belong to the age group 20 to 64 years, which shows that it is mainly the productive age group which migrate to other countries. The migration of this age group may have both the positive and negative effects upon the Indian economy. On the positive side, the migration of the productive population not only relieves the source economy of the burden of unemployed labor force, but also influxes it with more of the remittances, while on the negative side, the migration of this age group means drain of the skilled and educated workforce. The outflow of this segment of labor force may mean huge economic loss to the society, as this is the segment which any developing economy cannot afford to sacrifice. Many a times, the net returns from migration may also be negative. The Gallup poll on potential migrants from India suggests that educated people do have a greater desire to leave the country. More compelling is the notion that those engaged at work or those intending to start a business in the next 12 months have a greater desire to leave the country than the others. Thus, international migration may mean increased huge loss of skilled and enterprising youth for the country on the one hand and greater inflow of remittances on the other. Therefore, let us examine these two conflicting aspects of international migration from India. For this purpose, first of all, let us discuss the remittances and international migration. There is an international consensus that migrant remittances are the most tangible benefit of migration to developing countries. Migrant remittances usually go towards improved housing, nutrition, schooling and healthcare. Remittances therefore create human capital by financing education of the children and health for all age groups and improving food security for the poor households. Remittances also bring much needed foreign currency which may cover a significant proportion of the import payments. India is the largest recipient of the remittance inflows in the world. Based on the recent data released by IMF and central bank resources, international migrant remittances to developing countries are estimated to have reached $404 billion in 2013. India remains the largest recipient of officially recorded remittances in the world. This can be observed from this figure. The figure shows that India received about $70 billion in remittances in 2013. Other large recipients including China, which had received $60 billion, the Philippines $25 billion, Mexico $22 billion, Nigeria $21 billion and Egypt $17 billion. Actually, India had always been receiving the highest amount of remittances in whole of the South Asian region. The changes in remittance inflows to India and other South Asian countries can be observed from this figure. The figure shows that the remittance flows in India gained greater momentum after 2004. Officially recorded remittances to South Asian region are expected to grow by 5.5% to over $117 billion in 2014, accelerating from the moderate growth in 2013. Remittances to India, the world's largest recipient, are likely to expand by only 1.5% in 2014 to $71 billion, partly as a result of firming exchange rates. Remittances remain the largest source of external resource flows in South Asian region, covering imports and boosting foreign exchange reserves. The remittances as proportion of the imports and foreign exchange reserves in different economies can be seen from this figure. The figure shows that though India is the top remittance receiver in terms of the absolute amount, yet as percentage of its foreign exchange reserves and import payments, it covers less than 25% as compared to Pakistan, where the remittances constitute near about double the foreign exchange reserves and about 48.5% of the import payments in the economy, while in Nepal, the remittances are equivalent to 82.9% of the country's foreign exchange reserves and 169.5% of import payments. Thus, in these countries, the remittances are quite significant as compared to their foreign exchange reserves and import payments, while the same are quite minuscule in case of India. Another aspect of international migration is brain drain. We have already discussed that it is the young population which has a greater share in international migration. In India, about 65% of the international migrants belong to the age group 20 to 64 years. This segment of workers population is more skilled and therefore their out-migration means a great loss of productive asset to the economy. Traditionally, a skilled person should have greater opportunities in the home economy itself and therefore need not migrate, and her migration means a loss to the economy. But in India, we find the reverse trend, as those who migrate are also the ones which are the professionally qualified. This process has been stimulated after globalization. All the developing countries across the world have witnessed that since the early 90s, the international mobility of highly skilled workers has been increasing due to rising global demand for skills. Skilled people move for many reasons, including higher wages, better facilities and more opportunities for advancement. Destination countries also promote the immigration of professionals through their strict selection systems. This practice, popularly called cherry picking, in the sense of attracting the best and the brightest from poor countries, deprive the latter of the most qualified individuals for which they have made heavy investments in education and human capital, often at the public expense. A study by Adams has found that most of the times the migrants from developing countries in the developed ones have twice as much education as their compatriot at home. Another study by World Bank found that due to international migration, 77 countries experienced a loss amounting to 10% or more of their university educated citizens in 2000, while 28 countries lost 30% or more. Thus, the cherries that are lost in the process of international migration are the ones that are most required and are the life support system for the ailing economies of the poor countries. For growing economies, brain drain is a real concern, for it can have dire consequences for sustainable development. The outflow of skilled migrants leads to lower returns to their capital, which ultimately reduces a country's capacity for long-term economic growth. This also leaves little incentives for the local firms to invest in training people if the trained workers they regularly leave, and moreover, the absorptive capacity of any new and foreign technology and its spillover effects in any country depend upon its size of the skilled workforce, and under whose absence the countries find it very difficult to create the critical mass of know-how necessary for product development and for adapting imported production technologies to local conditions. Moreover, the emigration of highly skilled workers trained at public institutions means a loss of return to the society on its investment in higher education, as well as a loss of potential fiscal revenue. In case of India, the World Competitiveness Yearbook 2013 has found that India is ranked at 15th place among 60 countries in the index of brain drain. The value of this index ranges from 0 to 10, where a higher value means that the skilled workforce do not want to migrate, while a lower value indicates that it has greater urgency to migrate. The score of this index in case of India is 5.89, indicating that despite decade-long impressive growth of the economy, still a number of skilled persons have shown their willingness to migrate for better employment opportunities. Therefore, there is a dire need to retain this talent. Let us come to the conclusion of this lecture. In a globalized world, the mobility of labor as well as capital has grown at an unprecedented scale. People migrate for better opportunities and living conditions in the developed countries, but the recent experience have shown that the migration of the workers from south to south is as significant from south to north. India is one of the top 10 countries with largest outflow of international migrants. It is also top remittance receiving country. But if we look at the amount of remittances as percentage of import payments and foreign exchange reserves, these are much smaller as compared to other South Asian economies. Though remittances are considered to be the benefits from the international migration, the outflow of the skilled labor force also means a huge loss of productive assets to the economy. Therefore, it must be checked by providing better employment opportunities to our skilled workers. With this, I hope you would have enjoyed this lecture.